Welcome to Dreaming of Bells. Story 2, Gracie's Golden Thread. Chapter 1, Morning Cocoa and a Suspicious Glitter Trail. On Lullaby Key, mornings arrived the way a gentle song does. Quiet at first, then all at once. The ocean whispered against the rocks below the cliffs. Palm fronds shushed each other like they'd been told not to wake anyone too early. From the plaza, the flag in front of resident services fluttered as if practicing a little dance. Inside the roost, Brewster moved with his usual calm precision. He measured coffee like it was a sacred ritual, the kind that should never be rushed, not even when the day outside was full of errands and surprises, and villagers who believed anything could happen before lunch. Anabelle was already perched at the counter, swinging her legs like she couldn't quite keep her excitement seated. "Brewster, my dear bean of brilliance," she whispered as he set down her cup. "I had the wildest dream. Like, wildest. There was a runway on the beach and the waves were clapping, and someone very sparkly, said I had potential." Brewster blinked. He slid her a little biscuit on a napkin and gave a low, approving coo. His way of saying, "Dreams are interesting. Try not to spill them." Anabelle giggled and leaned in, like the cafe was sharing secrets with her. Today she wore a mint green cardigan with tiny embroidered strawberries and a pleated white skirt that swished when she moved. Her bow was perfectly centered. Her shoes, little glossy flats, looked like they'd never met a mud puddle in their entire lives. The bell over the door chimed. Poncho burst in, as if the cafe was a finish line. "Morning, team," he said, though no one had agreed they were a team yet. "Brewster, hit me with something that tastes like I just did 1,000 push-ups, but also like comfort." Brewster regarded him with the patient expression of someone who had served coffee to every kind of personality imaginable, including a peppy anteater and a jock cub in the same hour. He began brewing without a word. Poncho's outfit was peak Poncho. A blue athletic jacket with white stripes, shorts even though the air had a crisp edge, and sneakers that looked like they'd been sprinting since sunrise. A third bell chime, slower this time. Lobo entered with the careful silence of someone who liked to pretend he didn't enjoy company, despite the fact that he came to the roost almost every day. He wore a charcoal coat over a dark shirt, the collar up like he'd learned the move from some old detective movie. His eyes swept the room like he expected Trouble to be sitting in the corner nursing an espresso. Instead, he found Anabelle waving both hands like a windmill, and Poncho already doing calf raises beside the stools. Lobo sighed the sigh of a wolf who had accepted his fate. "You two always this loud?" he asked, taking the stool beside Anabelle anyway. "Only when we're breathing," Anabelle replied, as if it explained everything. Brewster set down Lobo's coffee, strong, dark, no sugar. Lobo nodded once in thanks, the closest he came to glowing. Outside the cafe window, the plaza looked normal until Anabelle gasped so hard she nearly inhaled her own excitement. Oh my gosh!" Poncho leaned over. "What? Is it a meteor shower? Can we race it?" Anabelle pointed. Across the plaza near the brick path leading toward Able Sisters, a trail shimmered in the sunlight. Not like dew, not like sand, like glitter, but not the messy craft glitter kind. This glitter looked expensive. It caught the light in small, precise flashes, as though each speck had been personally approved by a critic. Lobo narrowed his eyes. "That's not from any kid's DIY kit." Anabelle slid off her stool. "That," she said in a reverent whisper, "is glamour glitter." Poncho blinked. "Is there, like, regular glitter and then glamour glitter? Anabelle grabbed his paw. Poncho, buddy, pal, there is a whole universe. Lobo rose more slowly, coffee in hand. Looking like he was already regretting whatever adventure was approaching, they stepped outside. The glitter trail began at the plaza edge and led straight toward Able Sisters. And as if the island itself wanted to build suspense, the breeze carried a faint scent of perfume, something floral, sharp, and confident enough to walk into a room and demand applause. Anabelle's eyes shone. "Do you think?" Poncho cracked his knuckles. "If this is a mystery, I'm in." Lobo looked down at the glitter, then up at the tailor shop. "I've got a bad feeling," he muttered. Anabelle beamed. "That's how the best days start." Chapter 2. Able Sisters and the Doorway of Doom. Inside Able Sisters, the air was warm and familiar, fabric, thread, and the soft hum of work. Mabel stood behind the counter, folding a sweater with gentle care. Sable sat at her sewing machine, shoulders relaxed, hands moving like she'd been doing it since the dawn of time, which, for Sable, felt entirely possible. As the trio entered, Mabel's ears perked. "Oh, good morning, you three are early." Anabelle did a careful little spin. "We followed a magical glitter trail," she announced, as though this happened every Tuesday. Mabel blinked. "Glitter trail?" Lobo stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Someone's been here. Someone. Flashy!" At the word flashy, Sable's needle paused. Mabel's smile tightened into something like polite panic. "Oh, Mabel said, and she glanced toward the changing room curtain as if it might bite. "Yes, we have a visitor." Poncho leaned in. "A visitor like a tourist? Like Cap'n dropped someone off? Like—" Mabel interrupted softly. "Like Gracie." The name hit the room like a cymbal crash you could somehow still fall asleep to, because it was a memory of excitement, not a current alarm. A legendary kind of excitement, the kind that made you straighten your clothes even if you were wearing a perfectly good shirt. Anabelle went so still. Her beau looked stunned. Lobo's eyes widened despite himself. "Gracie, as in Gracie!" Poncho whispered. "Who's Gracie?" Anabelle grabbed his shoulders and shook him gently, like she was trying to install fashion knowledge through osmosis. "Gracie!" Anabelle hissed. "The fashion icon, the trend tortoise, the queen of chic, the one who makes people cry with a single raised eyebrow." Poncho's eyes got round. "So, like a boss fight," Lobo muttered. "That's one way to put it." From behind the curtain came a voice smooth as satin and sharp as scissors. "Is that the sound of villagers who understand the difference between cute and catastrophic?" The curtain swished, and there she was. Gracie stood in the doorway as if she'd been designed by the concept of dramatic entrance. Her shell shimmered. Her outfit was a layered masterpiece. A structured jacket in a deep plum colour, gold accents that caught the light, and a scarf that looked like it had opinions about everyone's choices. She held a little handbag like it was a trophy. Anabelle made a noise that was somewhere between a squeal and a prayer. Gracie's eyes swept over them with practiced intensity. "You," she said, pointing a manicured claw at Anabelle. "At least you tried. There's hope." Anabelle nearly floated off the floor. Gracie turned to Poncho. "And you," Gracie said, her gaze lingering on his athletic jacket like it had personally offended her, "are wearing courage." Poncho saluted. "Thank you." Gracie's eyes slid to Lobo. "And you," she said slowly, as if savouring the moment. "You're hiding, but you're hiding well." Lobo's ears flicked. "I'm not hiding." "You are," Gracie replied, smiling like a cat that had found a sunbeam. from joy, from risk, from sequins. Lobo grumbled, which, in wolf language, meant she's not wrong, and I hate it. Mabel stepped forward nervously. Gracie, thank you for visiting. We're honoured. We, didn't know you were coming today. Gracie waved a claw. No one is ever prepared, that's the point. Sable's needle began moving again, but her eyes stayed on Gracie with the calm of someone who had met many villagers and knew exactly how rare this one was. Gracie turned toward the trio. I came to Lullaby Key because I heard it's charming, she said, as if the word tasted strange, wholesome, full of potential, and I thought, why not stop by, see if there's a spark worth fanning? Anabelle nodded so fast her bow threatened to take off. We are very spark capable. Gracie leaned in. Unfortunately, she continued, someone has stolen something from me. The room cooled by 1 degree. Poncho's fists clenched. Stolen? Who would? Don't ask foolish questions, Gracie snapped, then softened, as if she remembered she was in a small island tailor shop and not a fashion courtroom. She opened her handbag and pulled out a spool, not just any spool, it was empty. My golden thread, Gracie said, voice low. A limited-run material used for stitching the final seam on a Gracie Grace piece. It's not just thread, it's signature, Anabelle whispered. Legendary. Gracie nodded. Lobo's eyes narrowed. So what are you saying? Gracie's gaze pinned them. I'm saying, she replied, that if you want to be considered more than just an island of pleasant hobbies, you will help me retrieve it. Poncho puffed up. We'll do it, right, team? Lobo opened his mouth to refuse on principle. Anabelle stepped forward and said, yes. And then she looked at Lobo with such earnest hope that his refusal got stuck somewhere behind his teeth. He exhaled. Fine, Lobo muttered. But we do this quietly. Gracie smiled. Oh, darling, nothing about fashion is quiet. Chapter 3. Brewster's Clue and the Croissant Conspiracy. Gracie insisted on relocating the investigation to a place with ambiance, which, apparently, meant the roost. They returned, and Brewster gave a calm coo that sounded suspiciously like I knew this glitter would come back here. Gracie sat at the counter like it was her private lounge. Brewster placed a cup in front of her with perfect politeness, though the tiniest flick of his eyes suggested he was bracing for critique. Gracie took 1 sip, paused, then nodded. Acceptable. Brewster's calm face did not change, but the entire cafe felt like it exhaled. Lobo leaned in toward Anabelle and whispered, if she insulted Brewster's coffee, I'd have had to escort her off the island. Anabelle whispered back, even legends have limits. Gracie set the empty spool on the counter. Listen, this thread was in my handbag. I was in Able Sisters for exactly 7 minutes. I did not set my bag down. I did not leave it unattended. I do not make rookie mistakes. Poncho raised a paw. Okay, so how does someone steal something from a bag you're holding? Gracie's eyes narrowed. Excellent question. I'm glad one of you is thinking. Anabelle leaned over the counter to examine the spool. Is there any residue, any scent, any sparkles? Lobo sniffed the air. There's a smell. Poncho sniffed too and made a face. That smells like fancy soap and croissant, Anabelle finished, eyes widening. All 3 looked toward Brewster. Brewster's gaze shifted just slightly towards the pastry case. He gave a neutral coo. On the counter near the case was a small plate with crumbs. Lobo narrowed his eyes. Someone was here recently. Poncho hopped off his stool. We should ask around. Villagers talk. They always talk. Anabelle nodded. And if someone's running around with croissants and fancy soap, I mean, that's a vibe. Gracie drummed her claws. I want my golden thread back before sunset. I have standards, and my schedule does not bend for petty criminals. Lobo took charge in the way cranky villagers often did, by acting like they weren't taking charge at all. All right, he said. We start with the obvious. Who on this island is sneaky enough to pickpocket an icon and foolish enough to leave croissant evidence behind? Poncho's ears perked. Sneaky, like a ninja. Anabelle gasped. Or a squirrel, Lobo sighed. Or anyone who thinks borrow is a lifestyle. Brewster made a low coo and slid them each a small paper cup. Water, no charge. It felt like a quiet blessing. Be sensible. Don't cause chaos. Come back safe. They stepped outside again. The glitter trail had faded, but the croissant clue remained. And just as they started toward the plaza, they saw it, a tiny golden glint caught in a crack between bricks. Anabelle crouched and plucked it up carefully. A single strand of thread shining like a sunbeam. She held it up, breathless. It's real! Lobo's expression hardened. Then we've got a trail, he said. Poncho pumped a fist. Let's go, Gracie called after them from the cafe doorway without getting up, because of course she didn't. Bring me results, she said, sipping her coffee like the island owed her a conclusion. Chapter 4. The Plaza Patrol and a Very Polite Interrogation. Their first stop was Resident Services, because if you were going to investigate anything official on Lullaby Key, you started where Isabelle kept the island's heartbeat steady. Inside, Isabelle looked up from her clipboard with immediate warmth. Oh, hi, she chirped. What can I do for you today? Anabelle clasped her hands. Isabelle, we have a fashion emergency. Isabelle blinked twice. A fashion emergency? Lobo lowered his voice. Gracie's golden thread was stolen. Isabelle's smile froze in place like someone had hit a pause button on her face. Gracie, she whispered as if saying the name too loudly might summon a runway. Poncho nodded solemnly. The legend herself. She's at the roost. Isabelle stood up so fast her chair squeaked. Oh dear, okay. Let's stay calm. Lobo looked around. Anyone report anything strange this morning? Isabelle flipped through her notes. Well, there was a complaint about sparkles near Able Sisters. Annabelle's eyes widened. That was us, Isabelle continued, and someone asked if we had a luxury leaf permit. Poncho frowned. A what? Isabelle held up a form covered in doodles of little leaves wearing sunglasses. They said they needed it for high-end commerce. Lobo's ears twitched. Who asked? Isabelle hesitated. They were wearing a big hat and sunglasses. They said their name was Glitterton, Anabelle whispered. That is the fakest name I've ever heard. Poncho cracked his knuckles. We should find Glitterton, Lobo nodded. Where'd they go? Isabelle glanced toward the window. They headed toward the beach, and they had pastries. Anabelle pointed dramatically. Croissant confirmed. Lobo turned to leave, then paused. He looked back at Isabelle. Don't tell Gracie we were here, he said. She'll start demanding paperwork. Isabelle saluted with a nervous smile. You can count on me. As they stepped out, Anabelle leaned close to Lobo. You're kind of good at this, Lobo grunted. I'm good at keeping people from making things worse. Poncho laughed. That's still good. They followed the path toward the beach, and as they passed the flower beds near the plaza, they spotted something odd, a dropped pair of sunglasses with rhinestones on the sides. Anabelle picked them up delicately, like they were evidence in a crime drama. "These scream Glitterton," she said. Lobo stared at the horizon. "Then we're close!" Poncho jogged in place. "Beach chase! Beach chase!" Anabelle giggled. "Let's solve a mystery and then maybe get smoothies," Lobo muttered. "We're not getting smoothies if this turns into a disaster." But the sun was bright, the waves were calm, and the island, like it always did, felt ready to turn trouble into a story worth telling. They headed toward the beach, and the adventure, like a gentle lullaby with an exciting chorus, began to swell. Chapter 5. Shells, Sunglasses, and the Suspicious Suitcase. The beach on Lullaby Key always looked like it had been tidied by invisible hands. Shells arranged like decorations, driftwood angled just so, and the sand smoothed by waves that seemed to understand good presentation. But today, something didn't match the usual calm. A set of footprints, light and quick, zigzagged from the grassy edge down toward the shoreline. In the sand, near a palm tree, sat a small suitcase the colour of whipped cream, trimmed in shiny gold. It looked like it had never been dragged, dropped, or treated with the casual chaos of island life. Anabelle stopped so suddenly Poncho nearly bumped into her. "That," she whispered, "is not a normal suitcase." Poncho crouched. "It's fancy, like a treasure chest for shirts." Lobo didn't crouch. He just stared at it the way you stare at a suspicious package you absolutely do not want to become responsible for. On the suitcase handle hung a little tag shaped like a leaf. Someone had drawn a face on it with a marker, sunglasses, a grin, and a tiny speech bubble that said VIP. Lobo's mouth tightened. "That's our guy." Anabelle picked up the rhinestone sunglasses from earlier and held them out like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "Glitterton, your accessories betray you." Poncho hopped up. "Let's open the suitcase." Lobo raised a paw. "No, we don't open unknown luggage on the beach." Poncho froze. "Why not?" "Because," Lobo said, "the last time someone opened unknown luggage on this island, it was full of turnips, and the smell haunted the plaza for a week." Anabelle shuddered. "Okay, fair. Turnip trauma is real." They looked around. The waves rolled in with lazy confidence. Seagulls weren't in Animal Crossing, but if they were, they would have been judging them. Near the waterline, something glinted, another strand of gold thread caught on a piece of coral like sunlight tangled itself by accident. Anabelle carefully collected it, holding it between her fingers like it might sing. Lobo scanned the beach. "Where would someone go if they didn't want to be seen?" Poncho pointed at the rocks to the east. "Behind those." They moved along the shore, footsteps quiet, the ocean steady beside them. The rocks created little pockets of shadow and sound. Wave hush, breeze hush, their own breathing. And then a sneeze. It wasn't the normal cute sneeze. It was a sneeze that tried to be dignified, failed, and then pretended it never happened. "Ah, cheek!" Poncho clapped a paw over his mouth to stop a laugh. Anabelle's eyes glittered. "Oh my gosh!" Lobo lowered his voice. "Stay calm. Don't spook him." They rounded the rocks. Behind them, partially hidden by a beach chair and a perfectly folded towel, stood a villager they didn't recognize, or rather, a villager attempting to be someone else. They wore a huge floppy hat, oversized sunglasses, not the rhinestone ones, these were cheaper, and a scarf wrapped so high it nearly covered their face. In their paws was a croissant. On the towel beside them, sat a bar of fancy soap, and next to that a small bundle wrapped in tissue paper that shimmered faintly, like it didn't belong on a beach. Anabelle clasped her hands. "Hello, Glitterton!" The figure stiffened so hard it looked like their soul tried to leap out. "Who?" they squeaked. Lobo stepped forward, calm and firm. "We're not here to fight. We're here to retrieve something that doesn't belong to you." Poncho crossed his arms, trying to look intimidating. Unfortunately, he looked like an adorable teddy bear playing security guard. The disguised villagers' sunglasses tilted. They tried to run, but on sand, with an expensive suitcase and a croissant in hand, running is more of a suggestion than a plan. They made it 3 steps before face-planting into a gentle pile of seashells. Poncho gasped. "Oh, you okay?" The villager groaned. "I am devastated." Lobo approached and crouched slightly, just enough to be human about it. "Take off the disguise." The villager hesitated, then slowly removed the hat. Underneath was Marshall. His smug little squirrel face appeared, ears perked, expression halfway between embarrassment and irritation at the universe for allowing embarrassment. Anabelle blinked. "Marshall!" Marshall dusted sand off his fur with exaggerated care, like he could wipe away the shame too. "Okay. Before you say anything, I can explain." Poncho stared. "You stole from Gracie." Marshall held up a paw quickly. "I didn't steal from Gracie. I would never steal from Gracie. Do you know what kind of terrifying power she has? She can ruin you with one look. No, He lowered his voice dramatically. "I borrowed it." Lobo's eyes narrowed. "Borrowed the golden thread." Marshall glanced at the tissue bundle. "I just needed a little. 1 seam. 1. For something important." Anabelle stepped closer, voice softening. "Important like what?" Marshall hesitated long enough that Poncho's expression shifted from suspicion to curiosity. Finally, Marshall sighed. "Fine, it's for Mabel." Annabelle's jaw dropped in a delighted gasp. "For Mabel? Like a gift?" Marshall's cheeks flushed. "Not like romantic, okay? Like respectful admiration. She works so hard. She's always cheerful. And Able Sisters it's part of the island's heart. I wanted to make something special for her. Something that looked professional. Like it could hang in a boutique. Like it came from a real designer." Poncho's eyes softened. "Oh." Lobo didn't soften yet. "So you thought borrowing Gracie's signature thread was the move?" Marshall crossed his arms. "I panicked. She was right there. She left the smallest opening in her handbag. Like a challenge. Like she wanted someone to try." Anabelle frowned. "Or like you were looking for a reason." Marshall looked away, ears drooping. Lobo stood. "Where is it?" Marshall pointed to the tissue paper bundle. "There! I didn't even use most of it, I swear!" Anabelle lifted the bundle delicately and peeled back the tissue. Inside was the golden thread spool, still glowing, still special, only a tiny length missing, like a single sunbeam had been snipped away. Poncho exhaled loudly. "Okay, good. We can return it." Marshall scrambled up. "Wait, don't tell Gracie it was me." Lobo gave him a look. "We're not lying, but we're also not looking to ruin your life." Marshall's eyes widened. "So, what do we do?" Anabelle smiled, bright, kind, and a little mischievous. "We take the truth and we wrap it in a bow," Lobo muttered. "That's your plan for everything." "It works!" Anabelle said, already turning toward the path back to the plaza. "Come on. We're going to solve this with friendship, accountability, and maybe a little bit of dramatic timing." Poncho pumped a fist. "Team Lullaby Key!" Marshall jogged after them, still half in disguise, scarf flapping behind him like gilt with tassels. Lobo walked at the back, eyes scanning the beach once more. In the sand near the suitcase, he noticed something else. Another set of footprints, heavier, slower, like someone had stood there watching. A footprint that looked large, tortoise large. Lobo's stomach sank. "She wasn't just waiting at the roost," he murmured. Anabelle called from ahead. "What was that?" Lobo quickened his pace. "Nothing! Keep moving!" But his ears were pinned and his mind was already bracing, because if Gracie had followed them, then their wrap-it-in-a-bow plan was about to be tested by someone who judged bows for sport. Chapter 6. The style trial begins. The plaza looked cheerful as ever, which made it deeply unfair. A balloon drifted by overhead. The fountain burbled happily. A villager hummed as they watered flowers, unaware that a fashion legend was about to pass judgment like a thunderstorm wearing perfume. They reached the roost. The door chimed, and the air inside felt heavier. Gracie sat at the counter exactly as before, but now her coffee cup was empty and her patience looked like it had been refilled with ice. Brewster stood behind the counter, calm as stone, polishing a glass as if neutrality could be physically maintained. Gracie didn't turn around. "I can smell the sand on your shoes," she said. Poncho froze mid-step. Anabelle smiled brightly. "We found it!" She held up the tissue-wrapped spool like an offering. Gracie turned slowly, eyes sharp. She extended a claw. Anabelle placed the spool into her palm. Gracie unwrapped it, examined it, and immediately noticed the missing length. Her gaze lifted. The room went silent enough that even the cafe's cosy warmth seemed to hold its breath. "Someone used it," Gracie said softly. Marshall tried to hide behind Poncho, which did not work because Poncho is, in fact, small. Lobo spoke before anyone else could panic. "Yes." Gracie's eyes flicked to him. And, Lobo continued, "we have the person responsible." Marshall squeaked. Anabelle winced like she wanted to hug everyone at once. Poncho whispered, "Buddy, you got this." Marshall stepped forward like he was walking into court. He removed the hat, the cheap sunglasses, the scarf. He looked smaller without the disguise. "It was me," Marshall said. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I panicked. I made a terrible choice." Gracie stared at him for a long moment. Then, to everyone's shock, she didn't explode. She didn't even raise her voice. She just asked, "Why?" Marshall swallowed. "Because I wanted to make something for Abel sisters, for Mabel. Something that looked like it belonged in a Gracie Grace shop. Something that said, 'You matter.' I didn't think. I just—" Gracie held up a claw. "Stop." Marshall stopped instantly. Gracie leaned closer, her perfume a cloud of authority. "You stole from me," she said, "because you admired me." Marshall nodded miserably. "Yes." Gracie sat back. Then she sighed. It wasn't a soft sigh. It was the sigh of someone who had been adored, imitated, misunderstood, and occasionally stolen from more times than she cared to count. "You made a foolish choice," she said. "But your reason is not ugly." Anabelle's eyes watered. Poncho's too, but he tried to blink it away like it was sweat. Lobo's ears lifted slightly. "So, you're not going to—" Gracie shot him a look. "Don't tempt me, Wolf." Lobo shut up. Gracie stood, setting the spool down on the counter. "Marshall," she said, "you owe me—" Marshall nodded rapidly. "Anything." Gracie's eyes gleamed. "You will," she said, "submit to a style trial." Poncho whispered, "Told you, boss fight." Marshall's whiskers trembled. "A style trial?" Gracie stepped away from the counter, pacing like a runway had been laid under her feet. "Yes," she said, "if you truly want to honour a tailor's work, you must understand discipline, theme, balance, purpose." She turned to the trio. "And since you three involved yourselves," she said, "you will also participate." Anabelle gasped. "Me!" Poncho did a heroic stance. "I accept," Lobo muttered. "I didn't sign." Gracie cut him off with a look that could hem pants. "You will," she said. Brewster made a low coo that sounded an awful lot like, "Good luck." Gracie pointed toward the plaza doors. "Here are the rules," she said. "You will create outfits for 3 scenarios using only what exists on this island. You will gather materials, consult the Taylor sisters, and present your looks in the plaza at sunset." Annabelle's face glowed. "Sunset runway!" Marshall looked like he might faint. Poncho was already bouncing. "This is awesome!" Lobo rubbed his temples. "This is a nightmare." Gracie smiled sweetly, which was somehow worse. "Scenario 1, she said. "A beach rescue, practical and heroic." "Scenario 2, she continued. "A cafe cosy, soft, warm, inviting." "Scenario 3, she paused, savouring it. "A festival finale, bold, memorable, hopeful." Anabelle clasped her hands. "Hopeful, yes!" Gracie's gaze sharpened. "And," she added, tapping the golden thread spool, "you will incorporate a single stitch of this thread into one look, properly earned." Marshall squeaked again. "How do we earn it?" Gracie pointed at him. "By telling Mabel the truth," she said, "and apologising. Without excuses today." Marshall nodded, eyes wide. Okay, I can do that." Lobo exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about thread anymore. It was about doing the right thing, without hiding. Gracie swept toward the door. "Move," she commanded, and somehow it sounded like a runway cue. As they spilled out into the plaza, the island felt the same. But the day had changed. It had turned into one of those rare Animal Crossing days where everything becomes a little more meaningful than it looks on the surface. A day where friendship gets tested gently. A day where someone brave enough to apologise can become someone brave enough to grow. And a day where Lobo, against his will, was about to become involved in fashion. Chapter 7. The Apology at Able Sisters. Able Sisters felt like a safe place. Warm lighting, soft fabrics, steady sewing sounds. Which is exactly why Marshall looked like he was walking into a thunderstorm anyway. Mabel smiled as they entered. "Oh, hi, welcome!" Sable glanced up, calm as always. Marshall swallowed. "Mabel, can I talk to you?" Mabel's smile softened into concern. "Of course! What's wrong?" Marshall took a breath. "I did something really stupid," he said. "Gracie visited today and I took a little of her golden thread." Mabel's mouth fell open. "You what?" Anabelle stepped closer, gentle. "He wanted to make something special for you, but he made a bad choice." Marshall's eyes squeezed shut. "I'm sorry. I didn't think. I panicked. I shouldn't have taken anything. I'm telling you because you deserve honesty." Mabel stared at him. Then she looked at Sable. Sable didn't say anything. She rarely did, but her eyes softened like she was stitching forgiveness into the air. Mabel took a slow breath. "Marshall," she said quietly, "I'm glad you told me the truth." Marshall opened one eye. "You are?" Mabel nodded. "I'm disappointed, yes, but I'm also really touched that you wanted to make something for me." Marshall's voice cracked. "I just wanted you to feel seen." Mabel stepped around the counter and gave him a quick hug. It was so sudden Marshall froze like a startled statue. "Thank you," Mabel said, pulling back. "But next time, just ask. We can make something together, okay?" Marshall nodded rapidly. "Okay, yes, absolutely." Poncho sniffed loudly and pretended it was allergies. Anabelle dabbed her eyes dramatically. "I love this island." Lobo cleared his throat and looked at a rack of shirts like it was suddenly fascinating. Mabel's expression turned practical. "So, what happens now?" Anabelle smiled. "Now we do a style trial." Mabel blinked. Gracie's style trial." Sable's needle paused again. Lobo said flatly, "Yes." Mabel's ears perked in panic. "Oh, no," Marshall whispered. "Oh, yes." Mabel straightened her apron like she was preparing for battle. "Okay, then we'll help. We have to." Sable nodded once. Quiet agreement, powerful as an anchor. Mabel clapped her hands. "What are the themes?" Anabelle nearly sang them. "Beach rescue, cafe cozy, festival finale." Mabel's eyes sparkled despite herself. "Oh, those are actually wonderful." Poncho pumped a fist. "Let's craft," Lobo muttered. "Let's survive." Chapter 8. A scavenger day with soft edges. The rest of the afternoon became a blur of classic island tasks, only now they had purpose that felt like a story. For beach rescue, Poncho insisted on practicality. "We need stuff you can move in," he declared, sprinting toward his house like the outfit might chase him. He returned wearing a life ring slung over one shoulder and a striped sailor shirt that made him look like the world's cutest coast guard. Anabelle squealed, "Poncho! That's perfect!" Poncho grinned. "And wait for it, water shoes." Lobo tried to argue that shoes were optional. Then he remembered sand. He stopped arguing. Anabelle leaned into the theme with bright optimism. A yellow raincoat, a straw hat, and a little tool bag, mostly for the vibe. "Rescue," she said, "but make it sunny." Lobo, determined to contribute without participating, chose something quietly capable. A dark work jacket, sturdy pants, and gloves. Anabelle stared at him. "You look like the mysterious hero who saves the day and then disappears into the pine trees." Lobo grunted. "Good." For Cafe Cozy, they gathered at the Roost to test vibes. Brewster watched them try outfit combinations with the calm patience and someone who had seen villagers wear full suits in summer heat. Poncho tried a cardigan and looked like a small dad. He loved it. Anabelle chose a soft sweater dress and insisted on a hair accessory that looked like a little leaf. Lobo refused anything soft until Anabelle handed him a warm scarf and said, "This is not fashion. This is comfort armor." He paused. Then he put it on. It looked good. He hated that it looked good. Brewster made a low, approving coo. And for festival finale, they went all in. They ran errands like the island itself was cheering them on. Gathering star fragments from storage, Anabelle had extras, just in case the universe asked for sparkle. Checking resident services for any leftover festival items, visiting Harv's Island in spirit, at least talking about it, because nothing inspires a finale like imagining a photo shoot set Marshall worked hardest of all. He asked Mabel and Sable for help designing a small accessory, something stitched, something simple. He didn't touch the golden thread. Not yet. Instead, he practiced. He measured. He pinned fabric. He listened. Lobo watched him, arms crossed, pretending not to care. But when Marshall's paws shook, Lobo stepped in, steady and quiet. "Breathe," Lobo said. "You're not stealing now. You're earning." Marshall nodded, swallowing. Thanks. Anabelle smiled so wide it practically became weather. Chapter 9. Sunset Runway, Plaza Lights. By sunset, the plaza looked transformed, not by decorations exactly, but by attention. Villagers gathered in a loose semicircle. Isabel stood near the front, holding a clipboard like she was officiating something official and adorable. Someone had placed a little speaker nearby, playing soft background music, the kind that made everything feel like it would end okay. Gracie stood in the centre like a judge and a work of art combined. Her eyes scanned the crowd. She lifted a claw. "The style trial begins," she announced. Poncho whispered, "My heart is doing jumping jacks." Anabelle whispered back, "Mine is doing jazz hands." Lobo muttered, "Mine is trying to escape my body." Look one, Beach Rescue Poncho went first, confident, bouncy, heroic. He did a little turn, the life ring swinging dramatically. The crowd chuckled warmly. Gracie's eyes narrowed. Then she nodded once. "Acceptable," she said. Poncho nearly cried from joy. Anabelle followed, bright raincoat, straw hat, tool bag, a smile like a lighthouse. Gracie tilted her head. "You understand theme," she said, "and your optimism is annoying." Anabelle beamed. "Thank you!" Lobo stepped up last. He didn't do a twirl. He just stood there, grounded, capable, steady. Gracie stared at him. Then she said quietly, "You understand how to be useful without needing applause." Lobo blinked. "That's a compliment?" Gracie smirked. "Don't get used to it." Look two, Cafe Cozy. Now the plaza felt like the roost even outdoors. Poncho in his cardigan looked like a small, protective guardian of comfort. Anabelle looked like she belonged beside a warm mug and a window seat. Lobo, scarf on, looked like he'd stepped out of a quiet storybook, one where the grumpy character turns out to be the safest person in the room. Gracie's gaze lingered. Then she nodded. "You are learning," she said. "Look, 3 festival finale. This was the one." The air held its breath. Anabelle went first. Bold colours, starry accents, a shimmering accessory that caught the fading light. She looked like Hope decided to show up wearing glitter. Poncho followed, bright and brave, with a confident stance that made the crowd clap without thinking. Then it was Marshall. He stepped forward wearing a clean, elegant look he'd put together with Mabel and Sable. Simple, tailored, thoughtful. And on his sleeve, just a single stitch, tiny but glowing, was the golden thread. The crowd oohed softly. Marshall looked at Mabel, then at Gracie. "I earned this stitch," Marshall said, voice steady. "I apologized. I told the truth, and I didn't hide." Gracie's eyes sharpened like she was searching for weakness. Then, slowly, she smiled. Not the scary smile, a real one. "Finally," Gracie said, "someone understands that the finest thing you can wear is integrity." Anabelle clapped so hard her hands nearly became fireworks. Poncho cheered. Lobo didn't cheer, but he nodded once, small and proud. The kind of nod that means, "I see you." Gracie lifted her claw. "The trial is complete," she declared, "and Lullaby Key." She paused, glancing at the villagers, the plaza, the warm island glow. "Why is not just charming?" She turned toward Mabel and Sable. "It has craftsmanship," she said, "and heart. Don't squander it." Mabel looked like she might cry. Sable's eyes softened. Gracie picked up her handbag. "And you 3," she said, looking at Lobo, Anabelle and Poncho, "were surprisingly competent." Poncho saluted. "Thank you, ma'am." Anabelle did a little curtsy. "We live to serve style and friendship," Lobo muttered. "We did what we had to." Gracie's gaze lingered on Lobo. "And you," she said quietly, should stop hiding from joy. Lobo opened his mouth, then closed it, because the sunset was warm and the plaza lights were coming on, and the island, this silly, sweet island, had somehow turned a theft into a lesson, and a lesson into a memory. Gracie walked away toward the dock as if she owned the horizon. Villagers slowly dispersed, chattering happily, and Brewster, watching from the roost doorway, gave a calm little coo that sounded like, "Good. The island stays gentle." Anabelle sighed dreamily. "Best day ever," Poncho stretched. "I want to do another trial." Lobo stared up at the first stars appearing. "Let's not," he said. But his scarf was still on, and he didn't take it off. Chapter 10. Gracie's Parting Gift. The plaza emptied the way it always did after something exciting, slowly, with little clusters of villagers drifting away like petals in a lazy breeze. Isabel lingered near the bulletin board, pretending to straighten papers that were already straight. Mabel and Sable stood just outside Able Sisters, watching the last of the clapping and chatter fade into evening. Anabelle bounced on her toes. "I can't believe she called us competent. That's basically the chic version of a trophy." Poncho rolled his shoulders like he was cooling down after a workout. "My cardigan era has begun." Lobo tugged his scarf slightly, then stopped when he realized he was doing it. He stared up at the sky like the stars might give him a distraction. That's when a shadow moved near the dock. A sleek silhouette, a confident pace, the faintest shimmer of gold. Gracie. She was leaving, of course. Legends didn't stay. They arrived like weather and departed like weather, on their own schedule, leaving behind stories and a lingering perfume of authority. But she paused at the edge of the plaza and looked back. "You?" she said, pointing. Not at Anabelle, not at Poncho, but at Lobo. Lobo's ears twitched. "What?" Gracie walked closer, heels clicking, even though she wasn't wearing heels. Somehow she made the sound anyway. "You did not embarrass yourself," Gracie said. "That is rare." Lobo gave a dry, cautious nod. "Glad to hear it." Gracie's eyes narrowed. "You're still hiding." Lobo's jaw tightened. Before he could reply, Gracie reached into her handbag and produced a small box, cream-coloured, gold-trimmed. It looked like it had never been touched by dust. She held it out. Lobo didn't take it. Anabelle whispered, "Lobo, take it." Poncho whispered, "It might be loot." Lobo sighed and accepted the box like it might bite him. Inside was a single item, a tailored coat, dark and elegant, with a lining that shimmered faintly. Subtle, not loud. A tiny stitched tag inside read, "Gracie, Grace, Custom." Lobo stared. Gracie lifted a claw. "Before you protest, it's not charity, it's an investment." "An investment in what?" Lobo asked, voice rough. Gracie's expression softened by 1 degree. "In the day you decide," she said, "that joy is not something you have to earn by suffering first." Annabelle's eyes went watery again. Poncho's too, but he pretended it was the breeze. Lobo looked down at the coat and didn't know what to do with his face. "Thanks," he muttered. Gracie smirked. "Don't ruin it by being sentimental." Then she turned, and with one final swish of scarf and confidence, she headed toward the dock. And the island felt brighter for having hosted her, even if only for a day. Chapter 11. The Roost After Hours. Later, when the plaza lights were dim and the pathways looked like gentle ribbons through the trees, the three of them drifted back to the roost. Brewster was still open, the cafe quieter now. The kind of quiet that wasn't empty, just resting. He served them without being asked. Anabelle got something warm and sweet. Poncho got something that made him say "woo" too loudly and then whisper "sorry." Lobo got his usual, strong, steady. Marshall arrived too, slower now, as if he was still carrying the weight of his mistake, but also the lightness of having owned it. He set a small package on the counter. "For Mabel," he said softly. This time, made the right way. Brewster gave a low coo and slid the package into a little bag for safekeeping, like the cafe itself could protect it until morning. Anabelle sipped her drink and sighed. Today was like a dream that also taught a lesson. Poncho nodded. I learned that cardigans are secretly powerful. Marshall laughed weakly. I learned not to let panic make my choices. Then, unexpectedly, all eyes shifted to Lobo. Lobo stared into his coffee like it might help him escape attention. What, he said, are you all looking at? Anabelle smiled gently. You didn't run away, Lobo grunted. Wasn't much of an option, Poncho leaned in. But you stayed, and you helped, and you wore the scarf. Lobo's ears flushed slightly. It was cold. Marshall's voice was quiet. You didn't have to be kind to me. Lobo's jaw clenched, then loosened. Yeah, he admitted. Well, everyone deserves a chance to fix it, once they stop lying. Brewster's coo sounded approving, like a stamp on the moment. Outside, the ocean kept breathing. Inside, the cafe held them like a lullaby holds a restless mind, steady, warm, forgiving. Chapter 12. The Golden Stitch on the Bulletin Board. The next morning, the plaza buzzed with the usual gentle rhythm. A villager doing stretches, someone watering flowers, Isabel humming behind the resident services counter. But there was something new. On the bulletin board a note had been pinned up, written in elegant script. Attached to it was a tiny snippet of gold thread, sealed under clear tape so it wouldn't blow away. Anabelle read aloud dramatically, To Lullaby Key, a reminder that style is not a costume, it is intention. Your island has intention, don't waste it. Gracie. Poncho's eyes widened. She left us a review. Marshall swallowed. Is it good? Lobo read it silently, then looked away quickly like it might catch him feeling something. Isabel stepped outside and clasped her paws. Oh, my goodness! This is so exciting! I should file this properly. Anabelle bounced. This is history, shared world history. And that's when they noticed the bottom corner of the note, barely visible unless you were looking closely. A small symbol drawn in gold ink. Not a leaf, not a bell bag. A tiny stylized key. Lobo's ears twitched. That wasn't there yesterday, Anabelle whispered, thrilled. It's like a signature. Poncho tilted his head. Or a clue. Marshall leaned closer. Why would Gracie draw a key? No one answered right away, because the island had a way of planting seeds that didn't bloom until later stories. Chapter 13. Night Beach Promise. That night, Lobo stood alone on the beach. Not because he was lonely, because sometimes you needed space to hear your own thoughts, and the ocean was good at not interrupting. The stars reflected on the water like spilled sugar. In his paws he held the Gracie Grace coat, folded neatly. He hadn't worn it yet. It felt like a decision waiting to be made. Footsteps approached softly. Anabelle and Poncho appeared, two silhouettes against the moonlit sand. They didn't act loud now. They moved like they knew this was a quiet moment. Poncho spoke first, voice low. We wanted to check on you. Lobo didn't turn. I'm fine. Anabelle sat on the sand anyway, smoothing her skirt carefully. You can be fine and still think. Poncho sat too, legs crossed. Also, the beach is good for big thoughts. Lobo stared at the water. After a long pause, he said, I don't like being seen. Anabelle nodded gently. That makes sense, Poncho said. But you are seen by us. Lobo's tail flicked. Yeah, that's the problem. Anabelle smiled, soft as candlelight. Or maybe that's the point. Lobo finally turned his head, looking at them. Promise me something, he said gruffly. Poncho saluted automatically. Yes, Anabelle leaned in. Anything. If we run into trouble again, Lobo said, we handle it the way we did today. Anabelle blinked. With truth? Marshall wasn't there, but his lesson was. Lobo nodded once. With truth. No hiding, no stupid shortcuts. Poncho grinned. Deal. Anabelle held out her hand, pinky extended. Pinky promise. Lobo stared at the pinky like it was an alien concept. Then, with a sigh that sounded like surrender, he hooked his claw gently around hers. Fine, he muttered. The ocean sighed too, as if approving, and somewhere behind them the plaza lights blinked quietly, like the island itself was keeping watch.